Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this season's Hot Books with my usual friendly bloggers. There's Anne, Jo, Linda, and myself. We've all picked up or chosen 9 books to read and discuss that have been published over the last 3 months. Most of them should now be out now because it's now towards the end of September. So welcome to everyone. We have got 3 books each for July, August, and September, and hopefully you'll all find something you want to read or recommend it to yourself or others. So we're going to start with Linda first, and she's going to kick off with her 3.
Okie dokie. My first one is Ginger and Me by Lisa, and I don't know how you say it, Sove, I would have said, and it's one that I did for my weekly, and it's about Wendy, who is on the autistic spectrum, and she drives a bus, and basically she just wants a nice easy life and everybody to leave her alone after her mum has died. And it's the kind of book you can read on different levels. So you can read it as a very pleasant, entertaining, endearing story, or you can look a bit closer and read it as an exploration of people just on the edges of society and those people who are not quite accepted by others. And Wendy meets Ginger, and Ginger is a shoplifting tearaway, and they get into all manner of adventures. And it's very similar to Elvira Carr, I can't remember the full name of the title, or maybe Joanna Cannon.
The Imperfect Rules.
Of the 7 Imperfect Rules of Elvira Carr. Yeah, it's very similar to that. It's a bit like Joanna Cannon, and it is really brilliant. I loved it. So that's my first one. That was out from HQ on the 21st of July. Then my second July one, I've only got a proof, sadly, but it's The Museum of Ordinary People, Mike Gale. And Mike is just such a phenomenal writer. His understanding of people, emotions, society is just beautiful. And this is another typical Mike Gale book. Jess gets herself involved with, funnily enough, a museum of ordinary people, and it's a collection of old stuff that belong to people, but of course we all associate emotion and people with different objects, so it's really quite touching. The characters are beautifully rounded, typical Mike again, and it really shows how we're all full of self-doubt. We all need somebody to love, and we all need to feel we belong. So it's a charming, uplifting, quite emotional read. As I said, typical Mike Gale. And that was out from Hodder on the 7th of July. And then my third July book, again, I've only got a proof, but it's All I Said Was True. I'm holding it oddly because I'm not in the screen for me, by Imran Mahmood. And I thought it was so clever. I know some people, I think, struggled with the then and now element of it, and the fact that you've got an unreliable narrator in Layla because she was present when somebody was murdered, but at the same time as being unreliable, she's telling the truth. So it's cleverly constructed. His writing is exquisite. It's beautifully written. Really good storytelling, and I thought it was such a clever exploration of the truth and how the truth can be bent so that it becomes untrue whilst remaining true. And that sounds bonkers, but it is a really, really cleverly written book. I am so pleased I read it. One of my favourite reads this year, and that one was out from Bloomsbury on the 21st of July. So those are my 3 July ones.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to tell us about yours?
Well, thank you. My first book is called Permission, and it's by Jo Bloom. It was published on the 28th of July by Legend Press. So Jo Bloom is probably best known for writing Ridley Road, which was adapted, I think it was by the BBC, for a series some time ago, which it was historical. this is her first contemporary novel, and it's about a married couple. They've been married for about 20 years. They've got 2 children, and they appear to be quite content. Faye, the wife, feels that there's a lack of excitement in their relationship. Everything's become a bit routine. So she suggests to Steve that they try an open relationship in the hope that this might reignite things. Steve's a bit uncomfortable with this, but eventually agrees. They have 3 rules: no sex with friends, their children should never be told, and they can only see the same person a certain number of times. So they're really totally unprepared for what happens next. It sounds quite easy, but can sex ever be sex, just sex? Faye becomes involved in quite an unusual and very toxic relationship and breaks the rule of not seeing a person more than a few times. And Steve struggles, he just struggles with it all. He struggles with the no strings sex. He struggles with Faye's, the demeanor and what's happening. It's really brutally honest look at marriage, and it's a bit terrifying at times. There's parts that can be really relatable to those of us who've been married for a long time, who just go through each day thinking, well, I don't actually think it, but when you do think about it, every day is quite the same, isn't it? The dialogue's really carefully created. The characters are just wonderful, and it feels quite real. It's really complex and emotive, and I enjoyed it very much. That's my first one. My second one is, and I've only got a proof of this one. It's called The Wilderness, and it's by Sarah Dogood. It was published by Tinder Press on the 21st of July. So this is Sarah Dogood's second novel. I read her first novel, which was written 7 years ago, and really, really liked it. It's about Anna and David, another kind of middle-aged to older couple with 2 adult sons. There's a theme there, isn't there? David's been thinking about maybe retiring. Anna likes to keep house. She likes her hostess trolley and everything to be neat and tidy. And she's quite happy in her own little way, even though people really take the mick a bit about her. And then they get a phone call. David's brother and his wife have been killed, and David and Anna are legal guardians to their 2 teenage daughters. So off they go to a really remote Scottish island, and David's really grief-stricken. Anna thinks, what the hell are we getting ourselves into? She does remember signing the papers, but I think anyone who does that doesn't really think that anything will ever come of it. So it's a large stone cold house on an isolated island away from anywhere else. And David decides that they can't take these girls down to London and uproot them, but they will go and live there, which actually horrifies her. David and Anna have got a friend called Brandon who's got some teaching experience, and he comes to help them. Brandon's a really, really odd bloke, and it takes them quite a while to realise quite how strange he is. It's really tense. It's only a short novel, but it's quite complex, quite hard to get through at times. The island and the house, the descriptions of those are amazing. They're kind of like characters in their own right. It's a real study in relationships and grief and how that affects people. And it's quite dark at times. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's The Wilderness by Sarah Dogood. That's book 2. And this is a proof copy too. This is Night Shadows by, why do I pick people whose names I can't say? Eva Bjorg Aegis-Dottier. This is the 3rd installment. It was published on the 21st of July by Arenda, and it is the 3rd installment of the Forbidden Iceland series. I really, really like this series. I think Ava's a real author to watch. Whilst you don't really need to have read the first 2 in the series, it would help because you can kind of detail the past events. It centres around a house fire in the small town of Acranes. A young boy's body is discovered inside, and it's a tiny little community where everybody knows everyone, and they're shocked to find that this might not have been an accident and was in fact arson. And so Elma, who's the detective, and her team try to take on the investigation to see why this happy, popular young man was killed. And nothing's ever clear-cut, especially in Iceland. And internet searches reveal some truths that are quite worrying, and there's some close-knit friendships that need to be unravelled. Ava's very good at getting deep into the human psyche. It's not just a basic police procedural, and also it's beautifully written. The descriptions of Iceland and the people there and the community are really wonderful. If you like Nordic noir, you'll really like this. If you've not read it before, it's there's some quite surprising reveals within it, and she does deal with some really quite dark and important themes too. So I think it gets better with every instalment, and we learn a little bit more about Elma's personal life as well. So yeah, another fabulous read from Ava. And that's my 3 July books.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to sort of mention that to anyone that is watching, all my 3 viewers and followers, that we choose our books well in advance of the Hot Books selection, and we all promise to read the books well in advance of the Hot Books Zoom. And my fellow bloggers have all read at least 8 or 9 of their 9, and I just want to give you all a big clap, well done, and to say that I have failed miserably, and I think I have read 1, 2, 3, 4 of my 9. So I'm going to be recommending 5 that I have no idea if they're any good, and I'm not going to take any responsibility if you don't enjoy them, but I actually fancied them just because of the cover or the blurb or the author. So I'm going to go on to my 3. These are for July. I have actually read this one, and when you see what it is, you're going to wonder why I picked this one to discuss, because it's basically The Daves Next Door. Possibly, if you've read it, the hardest book to describe or review. And actually, just reading my blurbs here, I'm thinking, why have I picked this? Published by the wonderful Arenda, as many of the books on here have been. It was published on the 21st of July. It's a standalone by Will Carver. If you have read any of Will Carver's books before, then I don't even need to say anymore, just read it because it's as mad as the others. If you haven't read any of Will Carver's books before, then all I can say really is expect the unexpected and go in with an open mind. This particular book is about the lives of 5 strangers who have collided on a train, on a London train carriage, and they all become involved in a terrifying event that will change them all forever. So 5 complete strangers meeting on a train, fine. However, yes, as with all of Will's books, the characters are unbelievable, as in not implausible, but they are, but they're all men. The man is mad. That's all I can say. The man is certifiably mad. He is a literary genius, and there's no point me even going into it. You've got a disillusioned nurse who suddenly learns how to care. You've got a desperate old widower who's overdosed and woken up to find 2 angels looking over him, naked angels, by the way. You've got 2 agoraphobic men called Dave, hence the name of the title of the book. They have a brain tumor and argue with themselves all the time. And then you've got an injured sportsman who wakes up and after an accident to find out he can only see in black and white. So you have complete wonderful characters, and each chapter is one of these characters. It's very original. As ever, the observational humor is just fantastic, and he's just so spot on. I loved the quotes. I loved everything about it. I just thought it was absolutely clever, just brilliant. And I think if you haven't read one, doesn't matter which one you start with, but this is definitely one you should read. Have anybody else read this one out of you lot? Anne. Just Anne. Okay. Right. The next one is also one I've read. Yeah. Hang on. Is also one I've read. Yay, hey. Hold on, now I've lost it. This is No Secrets by David Jackson. And just coincidentally, and Linda also wanted to talk about this one because she read it and loved it, but she felt sorry for me not having read any of the books, so gave it to me to talk about. But Linda will probably say the same. So No Secrets, well, it's no secret that I'm David Jackson's #1 fan, and I think Jo will agree with that, and probably Sarah Hardy when she watches it. I am his #1 fan, have been forever. Jo's now sticking fingers up at me. At least I think she did, or she could be waving nicely. This is a standalone book by David. If you have read of his, or if you haven't read any of his before, he's written a couple of series. They're absolutely brilliant. But he also does standalone. The latest standalone was published by Viper on the 7th of July. And it is about a young lady called Izzy, and the blurb reads that she is cursed. She has highly developed empathic abilities, which means she can read the emotions of those close to her. She can tell if someone is lying. Can you imagine if we had someone like that in Parliament? As a child, she sparked her parents' divorce by revealing her father's infidelity. And as an adult, she's cut herself off from almost everyone except her partner because she just is scared of hurting people around her. Some young girls go missing in her town. She's watching the news conference, and she sees what the last known witness of one of these girls that's disappeared. And she happens to know this man. He's the janitor at her school. And because she knows him, she can read him, and she can read that he is lying, and that he says he saw her getting into a car. She doesn't know how to prove he's lying, but she obviously takes it upon herself to find out the truth. It's great. The characters are brilliant. It's just clever. It's just that it's unusual. It's original. There are some quite disturbing scenes in there, and then some great twists. So if you like your books with some darkness and some suspense, murders and twists, and you'll love it. So that's No Secrets, which is obviously out now. And my final one is actually, I haven't read this. I'm going to hope someone else has here. Hold on, I can't even find it. Oh, come on. Oh, sorry. Technical error. Bear with. Here we go. Sorry. The Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This was published, good question. This was published by Minotaur Books. My date might be wrong, but it was July. We'll say it was July. Let me find a blurb about it, and then we can talk about it. It was okay. So it's she's the award-winning author of the breakout novels Little Secrets and Jar of Hearts, which you may have read. Again, a standalone. Paris Peralta is suspected of killing her celebrity husband, and her long hidden past now threatens to destroy her future. When she's arrested in her own bathroom, covered in blood, holding a straight razor, her celebrity husband dead in the bathtub behind her, she knows she'll be charged with murder. But as bad as this looks, it's not what worries her the most. With the unwanted media attention now surrounding her, it's only a matter of time before someone from her long hidden past recognizes her and destroys the new life she's worked so hard to build, along with any chance for future. I'm not going to go into much blurb, but it sounds great. It's right up my street. Celebrities, dead husbands, bathtubs, what more can you want? So it's out now. It came out on the 19th of July, and you can buy it on Kindle for $6.99. Wow, paperbacks are expensive on Amazon. So yeah, those are my three. Jo, you need to unmute yourself. It won't let you. Hold on. Sorry. It's technical. Hold on. Let's unmute Jo. Now? We're
back?
Yes,
Yep.
You're back. There we go. When you mute yourself, I then have to ask you to unmute. Hey, that's the power.
I had to mute myself because of the dog barking and teenage grandchild singing, so it all went a bit. I kind of just say though, Tracy, I think you are actually now David Jackson's #1 fan. I've actually had to demote myself. I think I'm about number 7 now, because not only have I not read No Secrets, I haven't even bought it yet. So I held my hand up. I've had to demote myself. And the Jennifer Hillier is on my wish list because I really, really want to read it. But for the paperback copy on Amazon, it's about 18 quid.
Yes.
So at the moment, I'm hoping by you telling people about it, they'll bring the price down. I'm desperate to read it. Anyway, my 3, I'll start with everybody's favourite author, Lisa Jewell. So this is The Family Remains. Now, it's a sequel to The Family Upstairs. And I would say, don't try and read this without reading The Family Upstairs first, because it really won't make much sense to you. You can, but I actually started reading it. I read about the first 3 pages and then thought I actually couldn't read it without going back to read The Family Upstairs again. And then I realised that I'd lent my copy to somebody, and apparently they are Lisa Jewell's biggest fan and wouldn't give it back to me. So I had to actually buy another copy to read it before I read this one. I know, the life of a book lover. This is amazing. It's the sequel. It's about the Lamb family. Anyone who's read The Family Upstairs or has read the blurb knows it's about a gorgeous house in London where there are 4 people lying dead and in the kitchen at a dinner table. They've been dead for a few days. Upstairs, there is a young baby in a cot, but that baby is in fresh nappies, being fed. So what happened to the people downstairs? Who's the baby? This is the baby all grown up, and we find out further what actually happened in that house. Yeah, it's amazing. Out in July, and it was by Century Books. Absolutely brilliant. And now I've got a big list for that at work. They're all after it now, so I can now take it into work. And the second one I've got, I know that Anne really liked this one as well. And I think Anne probably did exactly what I did after reading this, which was, have you bought the first 2 in the series?
No, I read the first one and I've bought the second and third, so I've not read that one yet.
We've not read this one? Oh, it's amazing.
That's the third, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
no, I had afternoon tea with him at Harrogate, so I got the first one then, and I loved it so much that I've now got the other 2 to read.
Yeah, I've done it in a totally different order because this is Under the Marsh, and it's the 3rd one in a series set in Scotland featuring D.I. Monica Kennedy. And you know, when you read a book and you all of a sudden you just think you want to read everything else I've ever written, because he's an amazing writer. I've never even heard of him before. I must admit, I'm so sorry. I'd never heard of him before, but I read this, absolutely loved it. This one is about Monica goes to visit a serial killer, a female serial killer. Not very many of them around, so they get an awful lot of publicity. She goes to visit her because she's hoping to find out about another victim, and Pauline seems to know where this victim is buried because she has a little bit of a treasure map with an X marks the spot, and Monica wants to find out if it's Freya Sutherland who went missing in 1994. The book actually starts with Freya. She's going to leave home. She's going to go to, she's fed up in Scotland, go to Berlin with her friends. She's waiting outside for her friends to pick her up. A van comes along. She bangs on the door, not the usual car friends have. The door opens, Freya gets inside, and she's never seen again. It's set in the Scottish Highlands, so atmospheric. The descriptions of Scotland are amazing. If you like Scottish crime fiction, then you have to read this series. It's brilliant. And the first 2 are From the Shadow, and the second one's Dark Water. So I've bought both of those. So I know I've read it in the wrong order, but that can be, if you want to just read this one, it can be read as a standalone. But I know you'll want to buy the other 2 as soon as you've read it. And then that was Vintage, out in July by Vintage. And my third one for July is, now I saw this everywhere and everybody was raving about it, so I thought I need to buy myself one of these, and it is Truly, Darkly, Deeply by Victoria Selman. And I think she was at Harrogate this year handing out proofs, wasn't she? But no, straight in there, bought the hardback. If you like serial killers, if you like true crime, although even this is a fictionalized case, I had a lot of Ted Bundy vibes, you know, the charismatic serial killer, or are they? It's about 12-year-old Sophie and her mother, Amelia Rose. Now they've moved to London from Massachusetts, and they meet a man called Matty Melbourne, and he becomes part of their lives quite quickly. They start living together, but then there are quite a few murders take place locally, and all the women look like Sophie's mother, Amelia Rose. Matty's then, he's put on trial for multiple murders, and he's put into Battlemouth prison, where 20 years later he is dying, and he wants to speak to Sophie to tell her the truth about what happened. So is he really a murderer, or has something else happened? Bit disturbing, that one, some quite disturbing scenes, but if you like true crime, you'll love this one. And that is my July books.
Lovely, thank you. So Linda's going to take over in a moment. So all of our books, all of everything we've suggested and recommended will be uploaded on my blog, Compulsive Readers, later, and all of our 4 bloggers have their own little photos of the books they've chosen, so feel free to share them on social media later. Right now we're into August.
Right, and I would say that if Tracy hadn't bullied me, I'd have had no secrets by David Jackson. No, she didn't bully me, really. Right, my first one, again, I've only got a proof, but I've got the sort of cover here. Claire Mackintosh, The Last Party. And that was out on the 4th of August from Sphere. And I'm a big fan of Claire's standalone books. So I was interested to read this because it's the first in a new series with, I'm not sure if she's DC or DC, I think, Fionn Morgan. And if I just read you the first bit of the blurb, just to set the scene, it says, on New Year's Eve, Rhys Lloyd has a house full of guests. His lakeside holiday homes are a success, and he's generously invited the village to drink champagne with their wealthy new neighbours. This will be a party to end all parties. But not everyone is there to celebrate. By midnight, Rhys will be floating dead in the freezing waters of the lake. On New Year's Day, DC, Fionn Morgan, has a village full of suspects. And what I really liked about this was basically, I suspected every single character in the story, apart from one of the controlling policemen elsewhere, kind of off stage, of having committed the murder. And it's really clever how gradually you understand who could have committed the murder, if indeed it was a murder, and why. And I think that's as much as I want to say in that respect. Having said that, one or two people have said, well, they found it fairly slow to start off with. But I think that's absolutely as it should be, because what she's doing here, Claire Mackintosh, is she's establishing a new character for a new series. And as the book progresses, we find out more and more about Fionn Morgan. And it's a cracking good read. It's a great start to a new series, The Last Party, and I'm really looking forward to the next ones that come along. Great picture of an intense community where everybody knows everybody else's business. Great character dynamics, quite twisty as you might expect. So The Last Party, Claire Mackintosh. And then my next one is completely different to the things that most people seem to want to read, but Skip to the End by Molly James. And it's a rom-com. And I chose this because A, I thought it might be quite a nice light read, and B, I've got quite into the idea of romantic fiction at the minute, and I'm thinking about applying to do a PhD in why romantic fiction is not recognise as a proper genre. But having said that, this is absolutely brilliant. It's so entertaining. It's a real kind of joy of a read, and it basically is about Amy, who, along with her mother, has this ability to tell if somebody is the person for her. She can tell whether, if she meets somebody, they are the one. And she's looking for the one. And at her friend's wedding, gets blind drunk, kisses 3 blokes, but can't remember who they are, but knows that one of them was the man of her dreams. And it's the story of how she uncovers who it is. And obviously there's a happy ending. The reader knows who she's going to end up with right from the very beginning. It's completely obvious, but that doesn't mean it's any less entertaining in getting to that point. So it's uplifting, funny, witty, entertaining, and just one of those books that you put it down and you finish it and you think, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. So skip to the end, out from Quercus on the 18th of August. And then also on the 18th of August is Wasim Khan's The Lost Man of Bombay. And I've been meaning to read that for ages because I love him. He's a real star. I think he's a wonderful bloke, really intelligent. When I've heard him speak, when I've met him, I thought, I really must get round to reading him. So finally got round to this one, which is part of the Malabar House series, which he's been winning awards for left, right and centre, the CWA Historical Dagger Award. And again, it's Persis Wadia, who is the female detective, set in the 50s. A white man has been found murdered, and it leads you a real dance of historical expertise, fabulous writing. There's a little bit of romance, there's mystery, there's police procedural, there's feminism, there's wit and humour. And although I expected quite a lot from Vaz's writing, I don't think I appreciated just how skilled a writer he really is. It's just fabulous. It's one of my favourite reads this year. I have to go back and read the others in the series because they're just brilliant. And I have taken Wasim Khan's books with me all over the world. They've been with me to India, they've been with me to Sri Lanka, and I've never actually got around to reading them because you get busy on holiday and you're doing other things. So fantastic that at last I have finally begun to read him, and this is just brilliant. Can't recommend it highly enough. So those are my August books, and that one was out from Hodder on the 18th of August.
Thank you very much. Lovely. We'll see you in a bit when we talk about September. Anne, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, my first August book, this is a proof copy. It's called Is This Love by C.E. Riley and is published by Serpent's Tail, and it was the 4th of August. C.E. Riley is the director of a literary festival called Prima Donna. She's written non-fiction before, but this is her first fiction book. It's written in a really unusual style, which I've since found out is called first person referral. So the narrator, it's almost as if they're writing a letter, but they're not. They kind of say, you walked out the door and you walked up the street, that sort of thing. So it takes a bit of getting adjusting to. But I was totally consumed by it. I read it in a couple of days. It's quite brutal and sometimes a bit violent, but it really is outstanding. So it's, if you like the unreliable narrator, which I do, then she takes it to the extreme here because there's more than one. Jay is the first narrator. Jay is talking to their wife, the woman that they love and adore and married and hope to spend the rest of their life with. But that woman has told Jay that they want a divorce. And Jay is just broken by this. I shouldn't have said that. Jay describes in detail how they met and fell in love with their wife, the whirlwind romance, the house that they bought. The wife stayed at home and looked after the house and made it into their dream house. Jay describes the wife as sometimes forgetful, a bit scatty, not really responsible, but Jay adores her. We then read the court papers that Jay's wife has prepared, and we read what she's accused Jay of doing. There's controlling behaviour, physical abuse, gaslighting, and it makes you realise that one story can have lots of perspectives. You feel kind of almost like voyeuristic at times. It can be really uncomfortable to read Jay's painful account. And Jay descends into really strange behaviours. The fact that we never know Jay's gender is really a twist, and we never ever know. So we don't know if Jay is a man or a woman. And whilst I was reading, I imagined Jay as a man, and then I imagined Jay as a woman, and it's quite easy to form opinions depending on what gender you assume Jay is. And I think that it kind of proves that no matter how inclusive we think we are, we still have deep-seated stereotypical opinions about people. I really welcomed the outcome, but I do wonder if it had been different if the wife had narrated the story. So it's really, really clever, really compelling, and I really did like the structure, and one that I think that people in book groups would love, because they'd all be discussing if they thought Jay was a man or a woman and who was right and who was wrong. So yeah, Serpent's Tail, 4th of August. That's the first one. My second one is My Other Husband by Dorothy Comson. I adore Dorothy Comson. I've read everything. In fact, she's one of the others whose books that I've read more than once sometimes, because I like them so much. And that's kind of going back to way before she did crime and psychological thrillers. So this one's about Cleo. Cleo is a very successful author. She writes kind of crazy crime novels about a baker and they've been adapted for TV, really popular TV. She's happily married to a guy called Wallace, but Cleo's decided that she's told the TV companies no more shows, and she's going to divorce Wallace. But why? And also, she's just been arrested on the suspicion of murder. So she's the queen of that killer hook line, and then the twist. I think there was at one time where I just thought, I'm putting it down because I just don't know what's going to happen next. Mouth, like, what are you doing to me? So we get to know about modern Cleo, but then we are taken back about 25 years when she was at university, hanging out with her best friend Trina, drinking coffee with 5 sugars and dipping Maltesers into them. Completely different Cleo today. And she tries to persuade Heath, a geeky boy who's at university, that she doesn't fancy him. But Heath kind of stays around, and Heath's a bit more than just geeky. And he becomes quite jealous, he's paranoid, and his actions have a really bad effect on Cleo. So is Heath back? Is this why she's changed everything or wants to run away? Is this why she's been arrested for murder? I'm not going to tell you, but it's about obsession and danger and secrets, and really, really, really suspenseful. I love it. She's just amazing. She really is. So that was Headline on the 18th of August. And my final August book is The Family Retreat by Bev Thomas, which was published on the 25th of August by Favour. So I read Bev Thomas's A Good Enough Mother, which was her debut, about 3 or 4 years ago. And that year, it made my top books of the year. I really, really loved it. So I was quite looking forward to this. This is quite different, but it's still as intense. And although it's quite a short book, it covers so many things. It really ends up completely different to what you thought it was. it's emotional and evocative, and you can tell the author is a counsellor by trade. She really gets into the psyche. So Jess and Rob have gone to spend the summer in a cottage by the sea. Jess is a GP, but it's clear, although we don't know why, that she's taking a break from being a GP. She seems to take on a lot, gets quite emotional, quite involved with her patients. Rob is a script writer. He's always on the verge of the next great thing that never seems to come to fruition. And from the outside, they seem quite happy, and the children are quite happy, but there's real inner turmoil that kind of simmers away until eventually it all just bubbles and comes to the surface. There's a little community in the holiday cottage village, and Jess feels drawn towards a woman called Helen, whose family are also there. They're nothing alike. Helen's practical and orderly and neat and tidy and very sensible. Their families are similar. They've both got a boy and a girl. They're attractive, but they're very different. There's a lot of strands. There's Jess's fallout from her workplace. She's having to cope with really strange behaviour of her elderly father. There's quite a lot of foreshadowing, really. You know, she does do a lot of this kind of just talks to herself a little bit like something will happen, and she's, if only I had known what was to come. She does that a little bit too often, maybe, but it adds a little bit, I suppose. We're never quite sure, but when it does happen, it's really shocking, and the passages are really dark and quite heart-pounding. And there's some horrific revelations, and everybody changes, and yeah, it's quite creepy, it's powerful, it's short, but it's really shocking. So I don't think I enjoyed it as much as her first book, but it's certainly a really good read, and I would recommend it. And that's Faber on the 25th of August.
Yeah, I agree with that, Anne. Intense, short, but it gets you. Yeah.
I loved that one too. Really was great.
Yeah, it's great. Good, I'm glad you agree.
Lovely, thank you. Another one I haven't read. Okay, on to, where are we now? We're still in August. Yes, on to August and mine. And surprise, I've read it. Okay, so this is Love and Other Human Errors by Bethany Clift, which was published by Hodder, I can't say it, Stoughton, on the 4th of August. I think I need to just thank Jo for this, don't I? Because
You did.
It wasn't it? You talked about Bethany's first book, which was the last one at the party. You spoke about it ages ago, and you said it was amazing. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I downloaded it, and then it sat on my Kindle. So whenever you talked about it, it sat on my Kindle until July, when I was on holiday, and I started to read Last One at the Party. And if you haven't read it, it's dystopian kind of, but regardless of the subject and regardless of anything, it was her writing. I loved her writing. It was something about literally how she just strung a sentence together. I just fell in love with her writing, her characters, her humor, and I thought that book was phenomenal. And I posted it on the book club, and I said, oh my god, this is just one of the best books, although it'd been out for a while. And somebody said her new book's up on NetGalley, so I immediately downloaded it and started the next one, which is this Love and Other Human Errors, immediately in Portugal, lying down on the sunbed, and actually read this book without even reading the blurb. So when I finished it, I then read the blurb and thought, well, that actually didn't make any difference, because it's just phenomenal. And to me, she's my new favorite author. I apologize, John Mars, but she is phenomenal. There's something about her writing, there's something about her characters, there's something that it just speaks to me. So this book is, again, it's speculative fiction, is how we describe it. It's set in the future, 5 minutes in the future, and it is about a young lady called Indiana Dillon. Now, I'm not going to give anything away because I went into this book blind, and it was just phenomenal. And I think that even the blurb, though, doesn't give anything away. She writes, so Indiana is our main narrator. She's actually narrated the blurb, so I'm going to read that for you so you can understand. It actually says it's an unforgettable story about love in all its chaotic glory. So the convention of a book synopsis is fundamentally ridiculous. How can I adequately convey in 150 words the complexity and bewilderment of the past 10 months and the effect those events have had on my perfectly regulated life? One would need much longer to record in detail how I was blackmailed into demonstrating the, I cannot say it, efficacy of my own soulmate program and forced to participate in a series of dates. How my world has been forever altered as a consequence. Prior to this, I was driven and focused, consumed with completing my own projects, destined to change the world with my work. A woman with one goal. I had no family, no friends, and no need for frivolous human connection. My life was structured and solitary. I am that person no longer. My name is Indiana Dillon, and this is the story of how I fell in love. There, 150 words. So that is so it's just such a brilliant, it's funny, it's moving, it's thought-provoking, the characters involved are fantastic. I just absolutely loved it, and honestly I would read anything that Bethany has written now, and I just love it. So just believe me, you don't need to say anymore, just read it. It's absolutely fantastic. It's out on Amazon, and as I said, it's absolutely brilliant. So that, and also will be going into my top 10 of the year regardless. So the next book, surprise surprise, I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure everybody else in the whole world has, and that's Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Okay, so no, all right, oh well, okay, so only Jo has read that. I love Alice Feeney. I've read all of her other books. There's no excuse for me not reading this because it came out on the 18th of August by Macmillan. I don't know why I haven't read it. It's just there sitting on my to-be pile. It's basically about I just have to read the synopsis because I haven't read it, but it's Daisy Darker's family were as dark can be. When one of them died, all of them lied and pretended not to see. As the leaves of autumn falling, Daisy Darker is arriving at her grandmother's house for her 80th birthday celebrations. Sea Glass, the Darker's ancestral home, is a crumbling Cornish house perched upon its own tiny private island and is at one with the granite rocks it sits on. The Darker family haven't all been in the same place for over a decade, and when the tide comes in, they'll be cut off from the rest of the world for 8 hours. When the tide goes back out, nothing will ever be the same again because one of them is a killer. I can't say more than that, except it's had huge ratings on Amazon. It's got lots of 5 stars and everything. Jo is nodding in the top, so I'm assuming, but everybody loves it that's read it. It's very dark. It's meant to be clever, compelling. Everyone seems to say clever is the main word on, you know, Catherine Ryan Howard said it's exceedingly clever. Lisa Jewell says it's clever and compelling. Need I go on? So there you go. So that's Daisy Darker, out now, Alice Feeney. My next book, I'm hoping someone else has read it as well, or has read it and can tell me about it. Hold on a second. Where is it? Okay, it's completely different. It's Mika in Real Life by Emiko Jean. Oh, Anne has read it. Is it a good one, Anne?
I really liked it. It's not kind of my usual pick. I don't know what made me actually did pick it up. Yeah, it was quite funny. I liked the fact that she's American but she's got Japanese heritage. Yeah, it's a while ago now, so I can't remember everything about it, but I know that it's an entertaining read and well written. I kind of felt it might be a little bit young for me. I think she may have written young adult stuff, and I think I could tell that. But yeah, it entertained me. I did like the kind of cultural sort of Japanese cultural sort of thing, because she's a modern American girl with a very traditional Japanese mother. So yeah.
Well, I picked this one as one of my books because I do like quirky characters. Sometimes it's nice to get away from the serial killers and the gore and the gruesome, and it's nice to just pick up someone with a quirky female characters. I love people like Elvira, or people like Eleanor, or people just characters that get under your skin and make you kind of love them. So the reason I picked this one, as I said, is it's about a 35-year-old lady called Mika. She's struggling. She's been fired again. Her relationship's just gone up in flames, and her mother is perpetually disappointed in her. I think we could all relate to that. And now she's had a phone call from 16-year-old Penny, the baby she reluctantly placed for adoption when she was just a teenager herself. Penny has questions, and Mika is desperate to meet her girl, but she barely feels like she can take care of herself. Is she ready to show Penny who Mika really is? And that's called Mika in Real Life. It was published by Penguin. It came out on the 2nd of August. And I think it was also a Good Morning America book club pick. So that is my third book. So Mika in Real Life by Emiko Jean. So now it's you, Jo.
Right, I'll start by saying that Daisy Darker is very clever.
Really? I wasn't sure. That was the one thing I hadn't picked up on.
Although I did fall out with somebody on Facebook about it because they wrote a review and I thought it was too much of a spoiler. So I asked them to take it down. And thankfully they did, because they didn't think it was a spoiler, but because I'd read the book, I knew it was a spoiler. So, but it's very, very
Clever.
Clever, that's the one. Right, my August books. Now this is one of my favourite books of the year. And I think that Anne and Linda both read it as well.
Loved it.
Have you read it, Lucy?
Don't be stupid, I haven't read any books this year.
I took it on holiday, but I didn't get to it. So
Oh,
it'll go on my next holiday.
I think you'll love The Mortification of Grace Wheeler by Colette Dartford. And actually, the one thing is, I will say that I hadn't realised that mortification had a different meaning to the one that I would normally use, the word mortified. So if something happens, you go, oh, I was mortified. But apparently mortification can mean great embarrassment and shame, but it also means the action of subduing one's bodily desires. Bet you didn't know that, did you?
I never subdue my bodily desires. That might be why.
So it's one of those books that I just love. I love books about women. I'd say my age. I think she's younger than me, but it's women who are going through the same kind of life experiences, I suppose. For Grace, it's her son leaving home, and she's got that empty nest syndrome, which I threw a big party and changed the locks on the house, to be fair. But Grace goes on a slightly different route, and her son Josh goes off to university. She's married to a much older husband. She's not particularly happy in that marriage, and I think her son going seems to make that quite clear to her. And she decides what she would like to do is, Josh is a great fisherman. He likes fishing. So she decides that so she can surprise him when he comes home from university, that she will learn to fish. So she goes to where Josh fishes, and she gets herself a fishing tutor. The lovely, I think his name is David. And so things sort of go from one thing to another, and they end up having an affair.
So is this the bit you could relate to?
No, this is the bit I did not relate to.
Oh, sorry.
I wondered that as well.
No,
It was either the fishing or the affair. I wasn't sure.
no, I'm fishing, and I haven't had an affair with a hunky fisherman called David. But and now this is sounding really bad now. So my husband is only 5 years older than me, and he doesn't wander around in his boxers eating cheese and crackers and annoying the hell out of me, only on Saturday nights. But it's one of those beautifully written books by somebody who really understands women and the emotions and the feelings, and it's just so beautifully written. It's I can't even describe it, because it's fabulous. You just have to read it. It's quite dramatic in places. The ending especially I thought was absolutely brilliant, completely unexpected for me, but it just seemed to fit. And it's just one of my favorite books of the year. I absolutely love it. And it's just, again, it's like, you could write the Chinese menu and I'd be like, reading every single sentence because I wanted to get the most out of every single word that she wrote. So it's that sort of, well, again, one of my favorite writers now. Absolutely love that one. And then I've got another, in fact, I think all my months have got a Scottish fiction, crime fiction. And this is the second one. This is my August one. And it's The Party House by Lynn Anderson. Now I've met Lynn, I think Anne introduced me at Harrogate one year, and I hadn't heard of her before then, and she's got a fabulous series of books, and I can't remember the character's name now of her series of books, but it's brilliant. This is a standalone book. It's called Party House. It's in a way, it's kind of COVID related, and people are like, oh, is it too soon to be writing about COVID? COVID's there in the background because COVID's quite a pivotal part of the plot line, really. There's a village in Scotland, the village of Blackrig, and they are outraged because a nearby estate is going to open its luxury party house to tourists again. Now, when COVID was around, they closed everything off. They acted like, during the plague, villagers would shut themselves off so that nobody could come in, nobody could go out, so they couldn't get infected. But obviously COVID came to the village, and now they don't want these tourists back again. They just want to sort of lock down, keep themselves to themselves. Just before the party house opens, the body of a young girl is found. When the party views, they go there for the evening, they do a lot of damage, a lot of vandalism, and while doing that they find a body of a girl who disappeared 5 years ago, a 17-year-old girl. The main character though is Greg, the estate's gamekeeper. And what I loved about this book was, although it was a Scottish crime thriller, there's a relationship there between Greg, who's a Scottish gamekeeper, and then he's got a new love of his life who's called Joanne, super name, who is a writer from London. And she's come up to this village, she's an outsider, and it's their relationship really made the book for me. I don't want to explain any more than that, but it's brilliant. She's such an underrated writer, I think. I don't think many people know about her, but I think she's absolutely amazing. So that's The Party House by Lynn Anderson, which is a Macmillan published. And the last one for August for me is Simon Mayo, TikTok. Now, I'm not big on your celebrity authors, as they call them, and I haven't read any before, but this one appealed to me because I liked the premise. I really like, so Sharon's just saying she loved the house party. It was brilliant, wasn't it, Sharon? I knew you'd love it. Definitely your sort of thing. Simon Mayo, TikTok. It's about a virus, but it's not a virus that you would ever have experienced before, because it starts with a tick, tick, ticking in your ear. And you just think it's, what's that in my ear? Starting with teenagers. And it's actually a clicking in the ear that can be heard by other people as well. So it just starts with people maybe videoing teenagers on the bus because they can hear this sound. Oh, it's funny, your ear's ticking. It turns out it's a virus. It sweeps the planet, and before you know it, also days later, it's starting to kill people. It's school teacher Kit Chaplin. He's one of the first people to recognise that it's a virus. It's something quite serious. At the school where he works, his daughter's friend comes along. he also starts to realise that it's quite contagious, because he realises that although his daughter's friend has it, then her boyfriend has it, other people in their group start to have it. And Kit the teacher, thankfully his partner Lily Slater is an eminent vaccinologist, so she starts looking into the mystery behind the TikTok. What I loved about this one was, although it's really well told, he's a great storyteller. At the end of each chapter, it's kind of, I'm trying to find a little bit now to show you. Although it's told by one person's point of view, at the end of this chapter, it's like Kit was doing something. At the end, it says like Rose was sitting on her desk. Lily was rereading her father's suicide note. So it kind of tells you what the other characters were doing just at the bottom of the chapter. And it just kind of brought everything together for me. And I actually like that far more than I was expecting. So that was Doubleday, Simon Mayo.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And I think it's time for September already. Where has the year gone? I just don't know. Linda, over to you for your
Right.
three.
Well, my first choice for September is out from Pan Macmillan. It was out on the 15th of September, and it's Adam Hamdy's The Other Side of Night. And I was fortunate to get a set of 15 of these for my book group. And I've not read Adam's other books, although I would quite like to. And I know he writes sort of quite high octane thrillers. And this is very, very different. Some of the book group struggled with it because it doesn't fit a genre. And it's quite twisty in times, and things get turned on their heads, and you're not quite sure what's going on a lot of the time. Others absolutely adored it and think it's the best thing they've ever read. I found it utterly fascinating, and I'll read you the blurb, because you can't say too much about the story, because if you do, anything you say actually spoils the story for other readers. So the blurb says, David Asher wants to tell you a story about three people. Elliot Asher, his son, broken by a loss that will redeem him. Ben Elmis, a surrogate father and David's trusted friend, a man who might also be a murderer. And Harriet Kilty, a retired detective searching for answers to the three mysterious deaths, whilst also investigating a man who might turn out to be the love of her life. Every word David tells you is true, but you will think it's fiction. And it's a really thought-provoking, cleverly constructed book. The characters are quite intense. I didn't like Harry at all. Couldn't warm to her at all, but I really desperately needed to know what happened at the end of the story for her. And Ben blew my mind, because I could not decide if he was insane, a murderer, completely innocent, whether he was being maligned or whether he was a complete genius. And the revelations that come at the end of this are cleverly constructed, really well foreshadowed throughout the whole of the book, if only you knew to look for them. So it's a book, as Tracy said about one of the others earlier, make a fab book group discussion. Sadly, since I have given these out to the book group, the last two meetings I haven't been able to be at because I've been on holiday, so I haven't heard in detail from all of them yet, but I thought it was interesting, intelligent, and a book that I think will divide readers. Some will love it and some won't, and I think that's the sort of book that really gets discussions going. So that's The Other Side of Night, out from Pan Macmillan on the 15th of September. And then, just because I like to try and feature a book that I don't think people will really have come across. This is I Am Ill with Hope by Gomi, and it's out from Salamander Street on the 27th of September. And Gomi is a poet and an artist, and he set out to walk the coastline of Britain, England and Wales primarily, and he just sort of set off with a backpack and a tent and his drawing pencils, and that was it really. But of course, COVID scuppered him. But it's a really intense, emotional poetry anthology. And, some of it is handwritten, some of it is typed, some of it has his illustrations. But when you read it, it's such a clever, intense, emotional picture of modern Britain and the people that he met. And there are snippets of conversations. In fact, "I am ill with hope" is something that somebody said to him about their lives and their future. And I just found it completely moving, really cleverly written. And, you know,
Oh, Linda, we've just lost you. I think you hit your volume.
Oh,
there you go. You're back. You're back.
Oh. What we're saying was sometimes the poems are just a few lines long. Sometimes they're several pages long, but it's just, if you want to have an insight into modern Britain, "I Am Ill with Hope," Gomi, out from Salamander Street on the 27th of September. And then my last one I haven't read, and it was published by Ultimo Press on the 1st of September, and it's "Where the Light Gets In," by Zoe Coyle. And the reason I haven't read it, I'd started it, as you can see, I'd just got a few pages in, and it was the day the Queen died. And the book is about Delphi Hoffman, who is a bit of a rebel, bit of a wild child. She's living in London and she's just beginning to find her feet. She's got a new relationship. She's just about to start the job of her dreams. And she gets a phone call from her mother, and her mother says, "It's time." And her mother wants her to go back to home to Australia to help her to die. So just at that moment when, you know, the Queen had just died about an hour before, and I just started reading it, and I didn't have the emotional energy to kind of carry on reading it at that point. But it is, I'll read you the blurb. Her mother Vivian's terminal illness has reached its tipping point, and she summons Delphi to Australia to help her to euthanize. Unable to deny her mother's suffering or her promise of a good death, Delphi reluctantly returns to her mother for the last time. This is the story of ties of family that enmesh in love and death, and the journey back to self in its aftermath. As Delphi is blown into the wasteland of grief and shame, she has to discover where her mother's life ends and she begins amid the atomic fallout her actions have unleashed. And I think, you know, euthanasia is a strong and powerful subject, and I really like the sound of it, but I just haven't had the emotional energy to get back into it yet, but I will. So Where the Light Gets In, Zoe Coyle, out from Ultimo, 1st of September. So those are my 3 September books.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I'm going to say Martin because it says it. Anne, please.
Okay, my first September book is The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly. So I read a proof copy of this in Malta last month, 38 degrees heat, laying on a sunbed. And I was at bloody Scotland at the weekend and Erin was there, so I bought myself a nice signed hardback. It's beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful cover. I love Erin Kelly. She's one of my all-time favourites. She writes crime fiction, yeah, but she's kind of got a genre of her own. It's so intelligent and quite gothic and mysterious. So this one is about, it's narrated mainly by Nell Churcher, who's lived away from her family for many years. She's chosen to live off-grid on a houseboat, and she's shunned the family wealth, making her own way, making glass art and travelling the waterways. Nell's father is Sir Frank Churcher, a celebrated artist and author. He wrote a book 50 years ago called The Golden Bones, which took the world by storm. And basically it's a treasure hunt story, and Erin based this book on a book that she read as a child that did similar, that took the world by storm. So it's a treasure hunt story, and there are clues littered across the country within the text. and there are bones to be found in different parts of the country. So this attracted people who were determined to solve the clues and find the bones of Eleanor, who is the female character, and he was scattered all over the country. One bone remains undiscovered, and that has a jewel in it, and it's Eleanor's pelvis. So Nell's life was almost ruined by the book and by the hunters, because they were obsessive, sometimes violent, and she decided to hide herself away because of a trauma she faced as a child. She's returned to the family home for the 50th anniversary celebrations. So the churches and Frank's best friend and his wife live side by side, and the family is very mixed up. One of the daughters is married to one of the sons. So they've always been a very mixed up family, knowing each other's secrets. It's there's quite a terrifying reveal when the bone is finally found, the jewel's finally found, because it actually is a real bone. So then the hunt is on to find out who it belonged to, who is the skeleton. It's a gothic mystery, and it's got such depth, but it's also a real insight into two very close-knit families and how they're interwoven. There's flashbacks from the decades before, how the two men met at university and how they came up with the idea for the book. It's just utterly bewitching. It's quite complex at times. It's quite difficult to fix it all together in your head. It helps if you're on a sunbed in Malta, you don't have to get up and wash the pots. But I really, really love the female characters. I think Erin Kelly does those so very well. It's addictive and disturbing and really, really inventive, and I loved it. I think she's a real master at what she does, and I can't wait for the next one. So that's The Skeleton Key. It was published on the 1st of September by Hodder.
Beautiful cover.
Gorgeous cover, and the proof cover was gorgeous too. But yeah, you know, us bloggers don't buy books, do we?
No, we just steal them, blag them.
Exactly. Okay, and my second September book is out by Simon & Schuster on the 29th of September, and it is Millie Johnson's Together Again. So this is a big book for Millie. It's her 20th novel published. It's a little bit different from her usual. It's not chick lit or romance really. It's women. So Eleanor's died quite suddenly, and she's been discovered in her bed by a long-term friend and neighbour, Sally. Eleanor's 3 daughters have come home to Fox House, where they lived as children, to deal with the funeral and sell the house. So the 3 daughters are Jolene, Marcia and Annis, and there's 7 years between each of them. And they never really bonded as sisters, and they don't really know much about each other because of the age gap. And in fact, the 2 older women haven't seen Annis for over 15 years ago, when she left home very suddenly. Jolene, the oldest, she writes romantic novels, and she's married to a businessman. Marcia had her heart broken as a teenager. She's quite hard-hearted now. She's a successful business owner. And Annis has drifted through life working in seedy bars and never really settling. So all 3 sisters are really, really shocked when they read the will and find that Eleanor left everything to Annis, despite the fact that she was always scornful and made out that she hated her because she'd left. And so as they spend time together, they begin to learn about each other, and there's long-held secrets that are discovered, and pain. They realize the pain that their mother caused to them, and the loss of their father, who they adored. There's some real dark issues here, but it's still got Millie's trademark warmth and wit and humour, but I mean, it covers things like parental abuse and coercive behaviour, and it's a story of vulnerability and strength, and how, despite them being apart for so long, the sisters have got this real bond of love. It's wonderful. I think it's probably my favourite of her books so far. And I mean, and she's not only a great writer, she's an absolutely amazing lady. So I like to be able to say that I consider her a friend. When my mum was really ill, Millie messaged me every single week to see how I was, and we spoke for hours and hours and hours. She's kind and caring and warm, and that really comes through in her books. And if you ever get the chance to see her at an event, she really is utterly amazing, and I would recommend it to everyone. It's beautiful, and it might actually make you cry a little bit too. So that's Simon & Schuster on the 29th of September. And my final book, which I've read, I can't see. I've read 70 pages of this. This is The Bleeding, published on the 15th of September, or The Bleeding by Johanna Gustafsson, published on the 15th of September by Arenda. So this is, and I know Jo's read this because I read her review today.
It's absolutely amazing. It's probably my favourite book of the year. Absolutely loved it.
Well, so far I'm really loving it. It's the start of a new series. So Johanna's an amazing writer anyway. Her trademark is a mix of historical and contemporary fiction. So she'll take things that have happened, like the Spanish Revolution, and link it in to present day. In this one, it's actually got 3 timelines. So I'll read the blurb. I mean, but so far, sometimes you think, I think I like this timeline better, but no, I love them all. So every time I come to the end of one bit, I want to go back to that. They're all equally as fascinating so far. So the blurb is 3 women, 3 eras, 1 extraordinary mystery. 1899, Belle Epoque, Paris. Lucienne's 2 daughters are believed dead when her mansion burns to the ground, but she is certain that her girls are still alive, and embarks on a journey into the depths of the spiritualist community to find them. And then 1949, post-war Quebec, teenager Lena's father has died in the French resistance, and as she struggles to fit in at school, her mother introduces her to an elderly woman at the asylum where she works, changing Lena's life in the darkest way imaginable. 2002, Quebec. A former school teacher is accused of brutally stabbing her husband, a famous university professor, to death. Detective Maxine Grant, who has recently lost her own husband and is parenting a teenager and a new baby single-handedly, takes on the investigation. Under enormous personal pressure, Maxine makes a series of macabre discoveries that link directly to historical cases involving black magic and murder, secret societies and spiritualism, and women at breaking point who would stop at nothing to protect the ones they love. And this is being published in September in a beautiful, beautiful hardback, and then paperback in March, I think. My hardback is on order, and I believe the postman has taken it back to the sorting office because I've got a red card. so yeah, I think those were sold out of the special edition hardbacks, but you can still get it in Waterstones or Amazon, and paperback in May 2023, I think. And that, so far, it's been wonderful. I think I read that 60 pages in an ad break last night. So
it is so clever. Wait till you get to the end, and it's amazing.
She's so good though, isn't she?
Oh, she just writes so beautifully.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Fabulous.
And that's me.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to my Septembers. And yes, I've read one of my 3, which I'm very proud of. And not only that, I actually read it last year. So I'm well ahead of the curve here. So because it was meant to be published last year and the publication date has been moved. So this is the one, it's called The Collective by Alison Galen, and it's published by Orion. and Anne has just done the blog tour for them so it was republished sometime in September. And I read it, as I said, it was well over a year ago. It's not a light book, okay? It looks very spooky, the front. It's been dubbed on the blurb as it's the Chain meets Kill Bill, if that sort of makes sense. So it's kind of, so there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of revenge, and there's a lot of so just how far will a grieving mother go to right a tragic wrong? That's the Camille Gardner is a grieving and very angry mum. 5 years ago, her daughter was murdered, and she is obsessed with a young white privileged man who she believes is responsible, but he got away on technicalities or whatever. So she can't get over it. She is stuck, as any parent or any person would be, with the injustice, the revenge, the guilt, the grief. She makes a bit of a what's the word? She brings herself to the attention of a secret group of women known as the Collective, who are a dark underground group who like to serve revenge on people that they believe, but not directly. So someone else will take revenge on your behalf, but then you have to then take revenge. So she gets caught up in this very underground dark world of revenge. It is, I read it, I believe I read it in almost a day, because it's just so, it's not a long book actually, it's only 283 pages, so easy, you could do that in an afternoon. It is literally unputdownable because the subject matter, this poor woman, this woman who is, her marriage is broken down after the death of the child, which is quite common. She is just this was her only daughter, this was the shining light of her life, love of her life, and was brutally murdered, and so she just can't move on. She is just so, her grief is so raw, and her determination to seek the justice for the death of her daughter was understandable, but heartbreaking, because she just couldn't let go. But she has a relationship, I don't want to go into any much detail, but there's some really heartwarming parts and there's some real heartbreaking parts, but it was absolutely, I found it fascinating. I thought it was brilliant. So I would say definitely read this one. It's called The Collective by Alison Galen. I think it's actually Alison Galen, and it was out in September by Orion. My next book, I was really clever here. I just closed my iPad and now I've lost all my pictures. Hold on a second. My next book, I seem to be reading a lot of books that have got these sort of these titles. It's called Sometimes People Die. Now, I've just finished How to Kill My Family, and everyone in my family has killed someone, and there seems to be an ongoing trend at the moment of these somehow people die in their. But anyway, this is the book I've chosen. It's by Simon Stevenson. It's a medical thriller for fans of Jed McCuro and This Is Going to Hurt. It's published it was published, sorry, on the 1st of September by the Borough Press. I just quite like the idea of it. I love the cover. The cover actually made me look at it and want to read this one. So it's a thriller based in the year 1999, if we can remember that far back. Some of us were only children. I'm joking, not me. Some of us must have been. Returning to practice after a suspension for stealing opioids, a young Scottish doctor takes the only job he can find, a post as a senior house officer in the struggling East London Hospital of St Luke's. Amid the maelstrom of sick patients, overworked staff and underfunded wards, a darker secret soon declares itself. Too many patients are dying. Which of the medical professionals our protagonist has encountered is behind the murders, and can our unnamed narrator's version of the events be trusted? So it just appealed to me, the cover, the whole and the title. And my next and final book for my
Tracy.
September. Sorry.
Tracy, I heard him speak at Bloody Scotland. He was on a panel with Jack Jordan and Eve Smith. He's amazing. So he's kind of like, just, you know what Jack's like?
Yeah.
Tall and handsome, and then Eve like petite and blonde, and this guy just kind of like shuffled on, and I've got a copy and I'd kind of put it aside to go on holiday with. He was hilarious. I think the book's quite funny as well in places, but he's an ex-doctor, and he now lives in Las Vegas and writes screenplays for Disney and Pixar. He honestly, he was hilarious. I think everybody in that auditorium thought, I want to read that book.
Well,
so, yeah.
Sometimes when you see the authors, I mean, I remember seeing some authors at Harrogate one year, and had never even looked at his book, but having heard him speak, downloaded his book, and it was absolutely brilliant. I can't remember who it was, but I'll remember it later. Right, my final book for the year, for the quarter. It could be a bit controversial, this one. The Butcher and the Wren. I'm not even going to... Alana Quart or something. I have no idea. Anyway, it's not... I haven't read it, so who knows if it's any good. It sounds good. It looks nice. It's basically out in... it's already out, 13th September by Penguin. Now, Samantha Downing loved it. She thought it was amazing twist and put down, and I love Samantha Downing, so if she says it's good, it's got to be good. It's a chilling debut thriller from the co-host of a chart-topping true crime podcast, Morbid. In deep Louisiana, a serial killer with a taste for medical experimentation is completing his most ambitious project yet. The media call him the Butcher, and so far he's proved impossible to catch. With her encyclopedic, you know what I mean, with her really vast knowledge of humanity's darkest moments and years of experience examining their victims, forensic pathologist Dr. Ren Mueller is the best there is. The longer the Butcher's killing spree continues, the more determined she is to bring him to justice. Serial killers, someone person. But yeah, it sounds great and right up my street. I like a good serial killer and a bit of gore. I understand it is slightly gory, but no idea. So I'll let you know at the next one. So yeah, so that's the end of me. And over to Jo.
Oh dear. Right, I'll start with The Blame Game by Sandy Jones. That was out on the 1st of September. Absolutely love Sandy Jones. She writes the sort of psychological thrillers that I would just read all day, every day. It's my kind of book. I know when I pick up a book by Sandy Jones, I'm probably going to love it because it does. This one, Your Word Against Mine. It's one of those ones where it's all very, there are two sides to every story, her side, his side, and the truth. So this one says, he came to me for help with his marriage. I was alone and afraid. She was there when I needed to talk. I needed to make him understand that he had to get away. I knew I needed what I needed to do. I just couldn't do it on my own. That I trusted her. Now it has gone too far and I can't tell anyone what I've done. Now I
love the movement. Thank God you moved to the left so I know which character's talking. Sorry. The money God spent that has. Now I have nowhere to turn and I just pray they find me before she does. Who? It's not method acting, this is method reading, isn't it?
Yes. So Amy, psychotherapist, she works from home on an estate where her husband Leon works as the estate's manager. She has clients in a little kind of cabin at the bottom of the garden. One of those clients is Jacob, who is being domestically abused by his wife, and he needs to get away. And Naomi, as you do, decides to go above and beyond the job that she's supposed to do and decides to help him. But who is telling the truth? So that was The Blame Game. Another Scottish one now. The Last Girl to Die by Helen Fields. Now, it's a standalone, this one, very different. She's got a series set in Edinburgh. Is it D.I. Callanan, if anyone's read it? She sets a lot of her books in Scotland. It's obviously her spiritual place. And even though I don't think she actually lives in Scotland, she does, I think it's her favourite place, so she does bring everywhere to life. This isn't set in Edinburgh like her other series is. This one's set on the island of Mull. So in search of a new life, 17-year-old Adriana Clark's family moved to the ancient ocean-battered island of Mull, far off the coast of Scotland, and then she goes missing. Faced with hostile locals and indifferent police, her desperate parents turn to private investigator Sadie Levesque. Sadie is best at what she does, but when she finds Adriana's body in a cliffside cave, a seaweed crown carefully arranged on her head, she knows she's dealing with something she's never encountered before. The deeper she digs into the island's secrets, the closer danger creeps, and the more urgent her quest to find the killer grows. Because if Adriana is not the last girl to die, what if? It blends a lot of like Scottish folklore, and it brings in that small town animosity and how they don't like outsiders coming in. She's from Canada. The family are actually American, and they bring in a Canadian PI to find their daughter. And it's absolutely gorgeous, beautifully written. So yeah, if you like Scottish crime fiction with a little bit of sort of folklore, have a go at that one. The Last Girl to Die, Helen Fields. And that was out on the 1st of September as well, so that's also out now. That was published by Avon. And then last but not least, Claire Douglas, The Girls Who Disappeared. Now, Claire Douglas is one of my favourite authors. She's one of those ones, I mean, I had this pre-ordered as soon as I was able to pre-order it, because I didn't even know what it was about, didn't read the blurb, just know it's Claire Douglas, I'm going to love it. And I absolutely loved the couple at number 9, her last book. So this arrived on Thursday and it was finished on Friday. Yeah, exactly. So 20 years ago on a rainy night, Olivia Rutherford is out driving 3 friends home. They've been in a club. There's 4 of them in the car. There's Olivia and her best friend in the front, and in the back are their other 2 friends who are both rather drunk. As they're driving home, the rain starts. You can just imagine the horror story, the horror film. They're driving along the dark road. The rain's coming in. She turns down the radio to see better. And then there's a flash. They see somebody in the road, and the car crashes. When somebody finds the car, Olivia is the only one in the car. The girls have disappeared. Their bags have disappeared. Everything's gone. Nobody knows what happened to them. And 20 years later, people still don't know what happened to them, until Jenna, an investigative journalist, decides to go to see if she can find out anything further with the anniversary. She's having problems at home, marital problems. She decides to get away from her husband. She doesn't want to leave her son, but she knows she needs to go away and sort of really get into the local village life and ingratiate herself there so that people will talk to her, because she tries to talk to Olivia, but it's obvious that Olivia is hiding something about what happened that night. We just don't know what. Running alongside this, there is another storyline of the holiday of a lifetime, with characters that we're not quite sure how they connect to the story, but they're off in Thailand. Girls are off there with their boyfriends. There's possibly going to be some drugs involved, maybe, but how does that relate to the story of the girls that disappeared? And that was out last week on the 15th. It's The Girls Who Disappeared by Claire Douglas, and it's brilliant. I just read it one sitting, desperate to know. Wasn't what I thought. I like to be surprised, and this book surprised me. But there you go.
Brilliant, thank you. So for the first time ever, I think we've done 36 books that people can actually buy and download now. Maybe one book's not out till next week, but I think that's well done, ladies. So I want to just say thank you as usual. and we are going to stop the recording in the moment, and then we can talk about everyone behind their back. And then we will meet again in December, the beginning of December, though, to talk about October, November, and December's books. So put a date in your diary, and I'm going to stop recording now, and I'm going to say thank you once again to everybody.